And welcome to episode 18 of Diabetics for Diabetics Radio. I am your host, Bowie Madison. Today we are navigating the supplement space for diabetics. So understanding the standards and practices in nutraceuticals, vitamins, minerals, herbs, botanicals, things like that. It can be a sketchy place to navigate as a consumer, and it's important as diabetics exploring alternative health methodology to understand what goes into making a supplement, the quality standards that companies have to meet, and what that means for us trying to do what's best for our health. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about supplements, what I use, the brands I trust, and why. If we have not met, my name is Bowie. I have had type 1 diabetes for over 21 years. I am exploring natural means of healing. I'm looking for a cure, sharing information as I go. I started this journey more intensively about 2 years ago, once I started to dive into mineral balance and holistic health, and I have been sharing ever since. So if you are not subscribed yet, I suggest that you do. Follow me along on TikTok as well. I have my channel there where I cover all things that I'm doing from an exercise standpoint, a health and wellness standpoint, as well as nutrition. So follow me there. Now let's go ahead and get started. So most of the time when people come to me about supplements, it is a hard sell. And here's why. Because supplements can be kind of complicated. So from my perspective, they are an important part of reestablishing mineral balance in the body. And we'll talk a little bit more about the balance of food and supplementation, because a lot of times when people think of supplements, they think it is some type of replacement, like, oh, well, I don't have to eat this anymore. I can just take a supplement for it, or I can eat whatever I want as long as I'm supplementing the good stuff, kind of thing. And that is not at all the case. And for any of you interested or knowledgeable about the supplement industry, you know that it's a little bit of the Wild West. It's not very well regulated. The quality control in the industry among manufacturers and sourcing raw materials is, in my humble opinion, not nearly as stringent as it needs to be. And we'll come to find that all supplements are not created equally. So usually there are about two groups of people when it comes to supplements. Those, like I mentioned before, that are ready to take whatever it is you tell them. They see it like a magic pill. Hey, I've got a headache. Well, hey, look, I heard magnesium helps with headaches. Well, I'm going to take a magnesium for my headache. But they take it without any context or without any regard for anything else that they're doing with their health. We'll talk about this a little bit later. Food always comes first, right? So if you are not paying attention to your diet, the contents in terms of vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients in your diet, supplementation is not your first concern. You need to master what it is that you're taking in from your food, as well as the things that you need to eliminate from your food before you start worrying about what you're supplementing. So a lot of the times people coming in will, they have the best intentions and they buy all the things, but they don't make the changes they need on the dietary front for the supplements to actually take their effect. Now, for every one of those, there is another that distrusts supplements as a whole, regardless of who's talking about it, right? And again, I'm sure everyone's kind of had an experience working with a dirty salesman in the supplement world, because it's a good place for them to hide. Because, like I mentioned before, the industry is very unregulated, and there are a lot of issues with the supplement world. It is an incredibly lucrative industry with very little scientific backing. So people are naturally suspicious, and rightfully so. So they kind of come at it as an absolutely not, I want nothing to do with supplements. I know they're not trustworthy, and absolutely not. And where I'm coming from is I'm a little bit of both, right? So trust but verify. So I'm looking to find companies that I can trust in terms of their sourcing and manufacturing, and making sure that I am educated and knowledgeable enough to know that I'm taking the right thing. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So supplements are in a league of their own. They are not considered food, and they are not considered drugs, and therefore they do not fall under the umbrella of FDA regulation. And so, I mean, it doesn't matter what supplement you're dealing with. There will be a statement on it that says these statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases. And Congress passed the DSHEA Act, Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994. This was setting the ground rules for companies in the supplement space. The definitions of what a dietary supplement was, standards of business and terminology. I mean, just like the warning says, nothing in a dietary supplement can be used in the context of treating a disease or preventing disease. Anything to do with any sort of medical terminology has to be away from any sort of dietary supplement. So the DSHEA Act was the initial congressional movement to set those things in stone. And as we'll see, there have been some workarounds in terms of some shady business practices. But it is important for you to know what actually is a dietary supplement. So anything, a vitamin, a mineral, an herb, amino acid, whey protein, any sort of dietary substance, not tobacco, or a combination of any of those. Okay. That's not groundbreaking, so to say, but you will be surprised what companies will mix into and make do as a dietary supplement. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but it has led to some, like I mentioned before, shady business practices. There is a lot of room for error in working around the verbiage of the DSHEA Act. So there is no true regulatory body. The FDA does not give their stamp of approval or disapproval for any supplement company. They have very loose manufacturing standards, but it's more related to the verbiage and making sure that it is out of the kind of healthcare bubble, right? So that being said, there are third-party companies that have come forward as the testers, quality control masters, giving these companies a little bit more credibility in terms of what they're putting in their supplements and making sure that there isn't anything in it that's not supposed to be there. The two main ones are NSF, that's the National Sanitation Foundation, and Good Manufacturing Practice Certification. So those NSF pertains to kind of cleanliness and quality control of the ingredients themselves. So there are a couple different levels of certifications within the NSF. One is that you can have your facility approved for, cleanliness, making sure that the different products are not mixed, that the equipment is well operating and cleaned properly. all those kinds of things, logistically making sure that things are run so that there's not a lot of cross-contamination. Good manufacturing practice is something similar to that. But that being said, getting your products tested by these third parties is an expensive process. It is a profit-driven process on behalf of the NSF and the good manufacturing practices. So if you are a new supplement company, you probably, starting out, are not going to have the budget to have your products officially tested, right, and verified by these third parties. So they don't do it, right? And so that is a cause for concern if you are not familiar with the owners, with the business itself, and where they're sourcing all of their material. So that pay-to-play mentality of, well, you can't make a lot of money until people trust your product, but you can't make a lot of money to pay to have the certifications to make people trust your product until you make enough money. It's a little antiquated. So you have to do your due diligence as the consumer to make sure that you trust the company and what they're putting in their products, right? And even these sort of third-party testing organizations, they are more focused on them, the supplements not hurting you, more than they are concerned with, oh, this is good for you. And that, does that make sense? So they want to make sure that they're not, it's like a liability thing. They want to make sure that, you know, there's not meth in your whey protein, right? So that it's going to kill you. Whether or not what the supplement is going to benefit you and be good for you is not really their concern. So you could have enough calcium in your body. If you're supplementing calcium and you're like, oh, it's a good calcium supplement, there's no guidance on who should be taking it and why. It's just, oh, this has been certified by the NSF. Have at it, right? There's no education piece on it. It's just like, oh, there's nothing that's going to hurt you in this. So in the name of profitability, and again, the supplement industry is probably it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It has a huge role in the kind of outlook of healthcare, especially in the 21st century. So where there's money to be made, there's corners to be cut, right? So along the supply chain, ingredients can be manipulated. Things can be fortified, enriched, colorized, flavored. Documentation and the standards of documentation are relatively poorly enforced, very little legal obligations, breaks in the chain of command, and then the regulatory bodies, you know, they have fines, warnings, slaps on the wrists, but limited means of actually enforcing it. So let's just say, for example, I'm running a highly profitable, low-regulated operation. Fat loss pills tend to be some of the most nefarious. So let's say I'm running a fat loss pill that has some pretty sketchy ingredients that can be harmful. Now, I can buy this product, mix it the way I want to, package it and sell it, market it like hotcakes. People are loving it. They're having great experiences with it initially because the ingredients are rocket fuel, and then they start to get sick, right? So in the span of time where people are buying it, enjoying it, and experiencing results, I am reaping in the dollars, making so much money. Now, once that kind of turns a corner and the adrenaline starts to wear off and everybody starts to get sick, well, now word starts getting around that maybe this product is not very good. So what happens is the regulatory bodies hear about this, they investigate the product, they find that it has some suspicious stuff in it, and they mail me a letter saying, hey, we've tested your product, it has this is not allowed, I need you to get rid of it, change your labeling, and give the appropriate, change your verbiage in your marketing, what have you. And so all of this takes time. I can appeal the fine. I can appeal all of the legal proceedings. And in that span of time, I am still selling, still getting that initial bump in profits before people get sick and the word gets around. So I'm just making as much money as I can. And right before legal action starts to happen and I need to actually make a change, I close the business. Oh, okay, nope, heard the warning, I'm going to close the business, right? So now, no harm, no foul in terms of the legal proceedings, and I've made my money, and guess what? Now I'm going to start a new company and do the same thing with a whole new product, right? So that's what happens in a lot of the supplement industry. High turnover, especially for people with unscrupulous ingredients. So even for those that are doing the right thing, they're doing everything they're supposed to, and labeling, and the product itself is good. Lots and lots of brands, companies, products source from one wholesaler or one raw material. And sometimes the only difference between products, whey protein is something I'm very familiar with. If you really cut open two different companies' tubs of protein, chances are that protein is literally the same thing from the same batch. The only thing that's different is the label on the tub. So, two companies will buy from the same wholesaler. One will put a flavor in it, one won't. They'll put different flavors in it, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing, just a different label. So you really have to do your due diligence in trusting the company and who they're sourcing it from, how they're testing it, and what makes theirs unique from the next. So in terms of reporting actually what's in the whey protein, I mentioned adding fillers, flow agents, and flavors, what have you. So in the chain, in the passing of hands, the chain of command of selling, the raw materials, the capsules, all the things that go into making this, a lot gets lost in the transitions. So let's say, for example here, Company X sells a whey protein mixed with two things, a filler and a flow agent, to make sure that everything doesn't get caked up in the tub. A company comes to me and says, hey, I want to buy your raw materials. I'm going to put it in a tub, put my label on it, and sell it. I say, okay, fine. Here you go. Here's your receipt. It's whey protein with the filler and the flow agent. Company Y says, awesome, thanks so much. I'm going to put it in the tub. Now, when Company Y goes to sell to either another company or to a consumer, they do not need to report the filler and the flow agent in that initial protein purchase, because technically on their receipt, all it says is you bought whey protein. And so when any regulatory body comes to say, hey, what'd you put in this? They say, hey, look at the receipt. It just says whey protein. They don't need to keep reporting it down the line. So that can be misleading, because a lot of times when you look on these bottles, you'll see a company and it will say manufactured for. So that means the company itself did not actually manufacture the raw material, package it and everything. They're buying their raw materials from someplace else, putting their label on it and having it sent. So not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to make sure that you are not just interested in the company, but if they're not manufacturing their own stuff, you need to go to the manufacturer and find out what their business practices are as well. Sounds like a lot of work because it is. But again, it will pay off in the end. And so you might be a little confused now because, Bowie, you said you were a proponent of supplements, and all you've done this whole podcast is talk about how shady the whole business is. And it is shady. But again, you got to put in the work to reap the benefits. So what are you supposed to do as a consumer? So you have to look for companies investing in the cleanliness of their product, in the cleanliness of their facility, and in third-party testing. I mentioned that NSF certification, that certified good manufacturing practices, to make sure that everything is being run, registered, logged appropriately. You want to make sure that the ingredients are true to form and that everything in it is on the label and there isn't anything in it that is not on the label. So you need to do your own research, right? Prioritize the absorbability. Avoid nonsense in the ingredient list that you don't understand what it is. And if there is something that you see that you don't understand, you need to ask. Call the company, email the company, find out the what, the why, and the how of what's in it. If you do not get an adequate response, move on to the next company, right? There's plenty more, okay? You need to do your own research. That's really the biggest part of this, because context is everything. I mentioned before that a lot of the regulatory bodies are more interested in the supplement not doing you harm than it is for it doing you good. It doing you good is up to you. We have a population now that consumes more nutraceuticals than ever before, and our health has never been worse. Why? We are throwing everything at the wall and hoping it sticks, right? We have no context, no background information of what our existing imbalances and deficiencies are so that we can supplement appropriately, right? So let's say I've got 5 times the amount of iron that I do copper, and it should be half of that. So I've got way more iron than I do copper. And I take a multivitamin that has equal parts iron and copper. Is either one of those going to move the needle on the imbalance itself? Or is it just kind of like 2 steps up for each one without actually kind of bringing them to equilibrium? That is the kind of approach we need to be taking. And we'll talk a little bit more about testing and means of addressing that. But if you do not have a baseline reading on where you are, it is difficult to supplement appropriately. There are very few cases where it's an outright, yeah, you should definitely take that, without even knowing what's going on in the first place, right? Because it's complex, and we'll talk about what you need to be things you need to be conscious of when you're supplementing. So talking about testing and getting your baseline levels, you can buy them commercially. So Everlywell, you can get blood panels and lipid panels from your doctor. Micronutrient tests. I know Thorne Research is one of the brands that I'm familiar with. They have their own tests to monitor different imbalances and deficiencies. My personal preference is the Full Monty Health Panel. Now, this is a blood test where you go to Quest Diagnostics or a LabCorp, have your blood drawn, and it measures a lot of different, I think, magnesium, copper, all different kinds of iron metrics, and gives you a good baseline for where you're at. Hair trace mineral analysis is another one, to measure through your hair what minerals you're excreting through your hair follicles. So a lot of different options in this regard, but you need to start somewhere to know what you need to address. And And then when it comes to getting those results and actually implementing change, you need to be patient. And that can be one of the hardest pills to swallow, pun intended. No pill or powder can erase a lifetime of imbalance in a week, a bottle's worth of pills, right? A lot of times people will say, well, I thought magnesium was supposed to help. I've been taking it for a week and I don't feel a difference. It must not be working. Pause for a second. How long have you been living the way that you have to create the imbalances that you're dealing with right now? Years, lifetimes for most of us. You cannot flip a switch with a couple different capsules in a month. You need to be consistent. I'm going on 2 years now, 2 years of supplementing consistently, and I am experiencing meaningful change. It takes time, and it takes persistence, and it takes consistency. Okay, so no, I don't feel anything. It must not work. Again, if you have that baseline understanding of what you need and you're taking it, be persistent. And in that testing, you need to understand that what you are supplementing is one puzzle piece in a much larger puzzle. So we live in a world now where the medical industry is in a reductionist mindset where it's one-to-one, where if you come in and you get a vitamin D test and you're low in vitamin D, well, if you're low in vitamin D, that means you need to take more vitamin D. The body does not work like that, right? What are the things upstream of vitamin D that are influencing your absorption of vitamin D, right? No vitamin, mineral, micronutrient acts alone, right? Where if it's low, it's the only thing affected, right? So you need to look at your deficiencies, your imbalances in the context of a much greater system. And you have to acknowledge the requirements for the proper absorption of those nutrients. So some compete, some complement. So for example, with magnesium, that's one of the more popular ones because a lot of diabetics are magnesium deficient. Calcium is preferentially absorbed over magnesium. So if I know I need magnesium and I go to take, let's say 300 milligrams of magnesium, but I wash it down with a glass of milk, which is rich in calcium, I'm not going to absorb as much magnesium because I took it with calcium. So you need to be aware of these relationships so that you're getting the most out of what you're supplementing. 2 more examples of that. Zinc competes with copper. So zinc will be preferentially absorbed to copper. Both are important in regulating your iron levels. And then vitamin C over B12, right? So if you pop both of those at the same time, you're basically wasting that B12 pill because the C is going to be preferentially absorbed. That being said, there are complements where it's better to take 2 together because they help each other get absorbed. Vitamin K and calcium, very, very important in bone mineralization and tissue, avoiding tissue calcification. B vitamin and other B vitamins, right? No matter what the B vitamins are, folic acid, niacinamide, B12, you'll see a lot of B vitamins sold as B vitamin complexes, and there's a reason for that. Vitamin E and vitamin C, 2 very potent antioxidants. Those are both complements to one another as well. You also need to be wary of the solubility, like what helps these get absorbed beyond just what they're being, the other vitamins and minerals. So there are fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A or retinol, vitamin D, vitamin E, and K. A, D, E, K. Those are the fat-soluble vitamins. So if you are supplementing them, if you're diabetic, at least, A, E, and K. I'm not a fan of supplementing D, but you need to be taking those with a meal or a source of fat so that they can be properly absorbed. For the water-soluble nutrients, which is just about everything that isn't A, D, E, or K, you need to be wary of how you're losing your fluids, right? If you are in warm, wet, it's summertime here, if you're sweating a lot, that means you're wasting more minerals than you were if you weren't sweating. Same thing as when you go to the bathroom, whether number one or number two, you are losing minerals through that. So again, is it something that you need to, put under the microscope every single time? No. But if you are very sweaty, I was a firefighter in the state of Florida for a while. I basically sweat for a living, and I needed to be up on my magnesium, potassium, and sodium in order to keep my blood sugars regulated. So, and then worth re-mentioning over and over and over again, supplements are a supplement to your food intake, never a replacement, never a bandage. Okay, so there's a big realization in food through modern agriculture practices of soil depletion, NPK fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides. A lot of the natural balance in the soil and in the food itself has been disrupted or diminished, but largely the ratio of nutrients and the biological compounds in the plants are built to be optimally absorbed by the body. Where supplements come into play is that we are starting from a state of imbalance through our Western diets, through our stress, through our lifestyle choices. We are starting from a state of imbalance, right? And the natural balances in the foods that we eat do not cater to our imbalances, right? So in a balanced system, the plants are there to maintain that, but it is not enough to, in a timely fashion, bring us back to balance. That is why I choose to supplement. I am supplementing to get myself to a state of balance where I can rely on the existing vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients in the food itself. Hopefully, again, this is in the future sometime, but to get to a point where I don't need to supplement and I can rely on food. But coming from the state of imbalance that everyone is in, I'm a fan of supplementing in terms to address that imbalance. So I mentioned before, patience and persistence. Start small, start slow. Find a company that you trust. I'll share the ones that I enjoy here, but you need to do your due diligence in understanding the what, the why, and the how of what your supplement companies are doing, what they're doing. And then in terms of the progress that you're making when you're supplementing, I mentioned testing. You need to retest. So I retest every 6 months or so to make sure that I'm trending in the right direction in all of my deficiencies and imbalances. So I've got links in descriptions. I've got links in the description for the companies that I trust. Thorne Research has emerged, or it's actually been around in the space as kind of the pinnacle, one of, if not the pinnacle of third-party testing, ingredient transparency, and quality. I've been using them for years, a long time. And I trust they're NSF certified. They do batch testing. So not just the facility, but also individual batches of specific products as well to make sure that there's nothing that isn't supposed to be there. Ancient Bliss is a newer supplement company. I'm familiar with the owner. I have checked in on the manufacturer of the raw materials for the products. It's third-party tested, and they have a pretty unique array of supplements that I haven't been able to find elsewhere. Things like sea moss and Tudka. Mitolife is the next company. Again, I've followed I've followed the founder for a while. I trust his logic, where he gets his stuff from, and his business practices, and I've been a huge fan of his for a long time now. So those are my three main sources of all the supplements that I'm taking, and everything will be linked in my bio. So I want to thank you all for being here again. Just a quick lowdown on navigating the supplement industry. Supplements can be a big help in managing your diabetes, but you have to know what you're looking for and why. And I actually wrote a supplement guide for navigating vitamins, minerals, and herbs as well. It's called Natural Solutions for Diabetes. That will be linked in the description as well. Episode 18 here, all right? So subscribe, learning more about healing. The more I learn, the more I share, and I'm grateful you're here, all right? So this is episode 18, Diabetics for Diabetics Radio, Navigating the Supplement Industry. My name is Bowie Madison. Thank you so much for being here.